Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with my co-host Chuck Manley. Scott Moon's lost in the ethernet of the webs, his computer, as always.
He is trapped in the matrix.
He's getting mooned by his computer right now. This episode of Live is brought to you by A Reign of Fire, the first book in the Great War series by Ralph Kern. It came out, I think, today. And came out today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that later, or maybe it comes out tomorrow. Now I'm all messed up. Maybe the audio comes out tomorrow. Yeah.
Ebook came out today. Some business negotiations in the chat.
Sorry about that, guys in the live chat. Hey, how are you guys in the live chat? Welcome to the show. If this is your first time joining us on the YouTubes, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and share it around and get more eyes on it. We can always use more great viewers like you, and we're well on our way to our goal of 1,000 subscribers this year. I think we're up past 850 now.
Are we really?
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
We had a huge bump up this last couple of weeks, and it's all thanks to you guys. So thank you very much. And welcome. Let's see who's in the live chat. Let's see who's going on here. I gotta click over.
Well, we got some Rick Partlow, some Lauren Moore, Nathan Petty. I'm gonna go with Petty. Jay Clifton Slater, Bard Petty. Of today. It is what?
I said maybe it's Petty.
Petty. I'm not sure.
Need a phonetic spelling. Ready, go.
So yeah, all the usual suspects.
Oh, hey, Clara Woods is here. Hi, Clara. Oh, look at this! I get yelled at. I don't know. Look at
that's what that's what got my attention when I said you were.
I'm sorry,
with some negotiating there.
Far be it from me to interrupt y'all. So we'll just sit here and wait till the live chat's done, and when the live chat says we can go. Oh, hey, Lauren, and Ariel Cho is joining us tonight. Hello. And Patricia Gillum says hi from Facebook. Welcome. She's one of the few on Facebook that actually follow the instructions. I don't know what it is about Facebook, but it wants you to log into their deal. It's very strange.
It's the Wild West, man. They're just a bunch of free spirits over there.
It's crazy.
They don't deal with rules.
Well, there's been so much activity and negotiating apparently in the live chat that I have no idea who was the first comment. So I'm going to give it to me because it's been a long time since I've had the Keystroke Medium Golf Cup of approval. I'm going to give that to myself.
Yay.
Because I can. Crazy. All right. We're going to talk about bringing realism into your unreal story, which I think all of us as science fiction and fantasy authors deal with in everything that we write. What's up, Joaquim Oliveira?
Joaquim.
And it was Chuck's idea, and one of the main things is not losing your reader in the fantastical. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But before, what's so funny?
I'm sorry, Rick did a quote there that took me back to my 10-year-old age. It's Ariel Ukla. We ride. Thundar the Barbarian.
That's way.
I love that show when I was a kid.
Is that like when you had to get up and actually phically turn the channel on the TV?
Yes, Josh, it is. Shut the hell up. Damn whippersnapper.
You know, what's crazy is we had a TV like that when I was little. I think it was like 30 years old at the time. But we had to do that. We got our first TV that had a remote control. And what was crazy about this TV is when the screen got too dark, it muted itself. And so like we had to, it was very weird. We had to like turn up the contrast on the TV so it never got dark because it would mute itself like in the middle of a show or movie. And we were like, what's going on? It's very strange.
I used to have to go outside and grab the big aerial antenna pole and turn it.
Twist it.
And they would yell from inside the trailer, okay, there, stop. That's a good picture. Stop right there. Rain, snow, they didn't give a shit. The kids going outside to turn the antenna. We can watch Rockford Files or whatever.
It's kind of like when you're watching Showtime or Skinamax on the old cable where you haven't paid for it, but it still gives the wavy lines and you can like try to watch it
Oh yeah,
halfway through.
so available back in the day. But anyway, no,
Good times.
sophisticated myself.
Well, before we get into our topic, let's talk a little bit about our week, man. What you been up to this week?
I'm gonna say I'm about 4 or 5 days away from being completely done, which is Jack Dark Urban Fantasy. And I spent all day yesterday all day Saturday. My daughter
Hold on. You're talking like a robot for a minute. Hold on. Let your computer catch up. Bill needs to be making some memes. If there aren't at least 5 memes out of that.
Is it better now?
Slightly. We need to get you on a hardline connection, man.
Yeah, I'm out. It'll take too long.
But yeah, like Tom says, it's like you're using auto tune. It's like the
you caught me.
So
Anyway,
I heard you say
you're good, busy.
You're pretty close to finishing your 8th on book, yes.
And then I had a bunch of softball games and theater stuff with my son and my daughter, and it just, taking care of my family and writing my books. That's my week. You understand that.
Oh yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Like Papa Chuck is on life support. Josh prepared to take total control.
And what's bad is I look fine on my end. I don't see any kind of stutter or anything.
Yeah. Maybe it's me. Yeah, maybe it's me. I bet it's me. Well, that's what Corvo says. You need to get the Bane voice right. I think next time you need the mask. I'm like, I was born in the dark.
You.
Yeah, and I can be Batman.
Ariel says that she thought I just got a new computer. I did. I just don't have a new internet connection, and I'm trying to work that out right now because my Google Fiber is on the other side of the house, and I can't move it. So it's way the hell over there.
You know how I fixed that problem? That's how I fixed my problem.
What did you do?
Well, because I drilled through the walls so I could run the Ethernet cable from the room across the way into my office. I drilled holes through the drywall so I could run the cable through.
Oh, dude. My wife would kill me.
No, but what you do is you do it underneath, like right at where the trim boards are. And you only need a hole like this big. I got a 100-foot Ethernet cable drilled right through.
Is it running along the baseboards to your?
Yeah. Oh yeah, run all the way around the baseboard. You pull those suckers off. You cut up a little bit of the drywall and then shove it underneath the drywall and get it all the way to where you need to get. Swear to God, the best idea I've ever had. Well, second best idea.
All right, you got me thinking now, but I don't know if you let me get away with it.
Nope, you just got to do it when she's not at home. Definitely don't let her watch the show. And then,
she does not give a shit.
When she asks what the white dust is on the floor, just tell her it's Coke. She'll forgive you for that.
She'd expect that.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Oh, okay, fine.
Corvo says,
as long as you're okay when you picked up the kids.
Corvo says, where'd that drill come from? And Jay says he's broken out the adult toys. That's right.
Oh my God.
So I had to drill down here because I moved my TV from this wall to this wall, and I had to move the mount. And so the mount I needed to drill for. That's a completely legit reason to have a drill down in my office. Just saying.
Rick says I should get a Wi-Fi repeater. I'm probably going to go get an extender tomorrow and figure out the best place to set it up in the house. So hopefully that'll help. We'll see.
I will buy you 100 feet Ethernet cord and a drill and make you just. It's good times. I've got a Wi-Fi repeater. It's not a big one, but I've got the router. I've got my modem and the router both in the same deal, and then I've got a repeater upstairs, and it does help a little bit.
Well, anyway, are we going to be able to have a conversation? Or
what's crazy is now that we're not talking about anything important right now, and you're not memeing at all. Like you're just a completely good conversation. So apparently, every time you have something substantial to say, it's going to meme, Chuck.
Yeah, I know. I love how you call it memeing.
Yeah,
so
I've coined it myself just now.
Just
hey, Kronos, how are you, buddy?
Captions under my face.
Yeah, we're still waiting on Scott. Apparently, what did he just say? He sent me a message. Let's see, what did Scott say? Oh, his computer's slow, so he's trying on his phone. Good times. Okay, so let's see. What have I been?
Because I never say anything important.
True.
So
I have been working on Valor 3 still. I've worked out a couple plot points, which is good. I did get verification that my short story for a super secret project got accepted, and so they're sending that in this week, I guess, to get edited and whatnot. And so hopefully here soon I'll be able to talk about it. And tomorrow I will be on Coffee and Concepts with Walt. He said it's 6:30 in the morning my time. I'm not sure I'm all about the 6:30.
Where is he?
My time. Walt, he's on the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go. Drill of Valor. Yeah. Good one, James.
Nice.
Drill of Valor. I like that. Very good. Oh, wait. Somebody else. I love Drill of Valor. Oh, maybe that was Rick that came up with it. Yeah, it was Rick. No. How many Valor memes do we have? Oh, Bard did it.
Enema of Valor. The galaxy is full of shit. That's actually not bad.
It's very good. I'm not saying guys. Guy, you say the most inappropriate ones on the show every time.
Chuck meme of Valor.
All right. So let's talk about that. And
okay.
I'm interested in your take on it because it was your idea. So why don't you start us off and walk us through making the Unreal real?
Well, most of our audience, I think, are into speculative fiction of one. Hey, Saved by the Scott.
Saved. Maybe. Oh, wait, let's see if he's got the echo.
Can I echo?
Sounds good.
Sound good, man.
All right. Yeah, that's all it took.
Fantastic.
When in doubt, reboot. That's what I say.
I always feel like I'm rolling the dice when I reboot with my history of computer issues. But anyway, carry on. You sound like you're in the middle of some stuff.
Well, real quick, tell us what you've been up to this week.
Just a real busy week at work. I'm not really sure why. I didn't get a lot done, but did some writing. Kind of been in that editing that people familiar with my process know when I get towards the end, I kind of start from the beginning of the book. So I have like a editing thing. So I've been working through that, getting ready to write a couple of follow-up chapters, itching to do some other side projects, which I've been tinkering with, but good stuff, waiting for it to get warm enough because I have a half put together workbench I got for my birthday in October that's in my garage. It still hasn't been put together, but someday it'll be done. So that's it. That's for me. Stuff.
Well, all righty.
Yeah.
Okay. So the majority of us, as I was saying, are
boom. Early with the memes.
That's a good one.
Oh, real.
All right.
Nice work, Bill. Your check is in the mail, sir. Your check is in the mail.
Well done. All right. So most of us write speculative fiction in some form or another, fantasy, science fiction. We write stories that have elements that you could consider impossible. Even if you're writing science fiction, a lot of the things that the elements in those stories, faster than light travel, teleport, whatever you go for, these are impossible things. These are fantastic things. And when you start putting stuff like that into stories, it's very easy for things like that to overshadow the more human and realistic elements of a story that actually engage readers. If you have too much super science, too much magic, whatever, you have to be careful that there's some element to those stories that the readers can relate to,
right,
and that they can latch onto, and that's going to pull them through the fantastical parts of the story. And that's what I meant by making, I have on my little business cards I had printed up a million years ago when I thought I was going to be a professional. It says real characters, unreal situations, or something like that. And that's what I meant by all this. Like, let's say I write fantasy primarily. So but I always try to make sure that even if it's like epic fantasy or horror or whatever, that the characters and they have traits and habits and things happen to them that everybody would be like, oh wow, I know what that's like. That's something real. Like I've written stories about characters who had like superpowers, who could do amazing things, but they still were late with their rent, or their boyfriend dumped them or whatever. So that was the impetus for the whole topic, was how do we take all this fantastic stuff we write but still keep it realistic enough that we don't lose the readers in all this sea of impossibility. Thoughts?
I think that's good. I think it also the amount of grounding that you need kind of depends on the story that you're telling too, right? Like if you're telling an urban fantasy, you probably don't need as much grounding. But if you're telling like a far future science fiction novel that has a whole bunch of different fantastical elements, you need a little bit more grounding.
Yeah.
So go into that a little bit. So you're basically referring that in urban fantasy, we already know the regular world, and there's just like magic added to the regular world.
Right.
So there's a less of a steep learning curve for the reader. Is that what you're saying? Basically.
You talking to me or Josh?
Well, I was talking to Josh because he was talking about grounding, and I was.
Well, if you've got like, for instance, Peter F. Hamilton stuff, it's like way far, far future. And there's a lot of things that aren't even possible right now, but a lot of things in his books, like he has trains, for instance, and people they understand what a train is. He doesn't need to explain it. And they go through wormholes, and everybody knows what a wormhole is, basically. So like he's got all this fantastical stuff going on, these big sweeping galactic things, but these two really simple things that people understand and really know on a factual basis or on a conceptual basis. That will keep the suspension of disbelief a little better than. I'm trying to think of a story that for instance, I think one of the things that Brandon Sanderson doesn't do well is the grounding.
Oh, what?
Yeah. No,
he does. You're right.
Follow me on this, because the learning curves on his books are so steep, because he doesn't. There's very little that he grounds to what we understand. For instance, in the Stormlight, Lauren Heresy, in the Stormlight books, you have to, like, he explains nothing. Like he says Sprin, like you should understand what Sprin is, and he says Rockbud, like you should understand what Rockbud is. And he does this throughout the whole book. He never explains it. They have these big crab creatures that the only reason you can understand what they are is because you know what a crab is, but it's like 20 feet tall. Like there's a lot of things in his books that really aren't used, that there's no bringing it back to our understanding of what the world is. Right.
Yeah. It's not like a normal fantasy, like in a Lord of the Rings type fantasy. They come riding in there, and you know what a horse is, you know what a guy in armor basically looks like.
Yeah.
You know what an elf, dwarf, and a hobbit look like, and things like that. But in Sanderson stuff, everything is new.
Yes. And the interesting thing about the Stormlight Archives is there's some very odd references to chickens. And he talks about chickens. He's mentioned them a couple times, but nobody knows what they are.
Chicken?
Yeah. Like some people, they'll yes.
Tastes like chicken.
So I can't remember who mentions it. There's a couple characters that mention it, and actually one that really knows what it is, but it's an obscure reference to an animal. Like they have horses, but they don't have a lot of horses. But they have chickens, but nobody really understands what they are. And it's very strange. So it's almost like he's talking about humans like they're from Earth, but there's no reference to Earth other than yes, it's a chicken, and it doesn't have any. It's not really from this world where they're on.
It's an exotic animal in there. I wonder if he did that intentionally, like just like to juxtapose how much different it is.
Yeah, I don't know, and definitely KFC.
Well, he must be doing something right because he's doing okay for himself.
Ariel mentions that everybody should drink because you mentioned Sanderson.
No, that's right, Sanderson reference. Take it.
One of the examples when you asked me earlier if I had examples of this, something that popped to mind immediately was, and this is both a book and a TV show, and I've read all the books, and I'm currently in the second season of the TV show, but the the Takashi Kovacs Altered Carbon. That was the first novel, and then the other novels had different names. But Altered Carbon, I mean, you think about that. It's pretty much a far future setting. Mm-hmm. It's got the impossible elements in the form of the stacks and needle casting and all that other stuff. But the people are still people.
Yeah.
You've got the haves and the have-nots. You've got everybody out for themselves, and some people trying to be good in this horrible world.
Pornography.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so you've got those very, very human elements, but then it's got all this fantastic technology centered around it. So you can latch on to a character like Takashi, who's just this tortured warrior guy, and it just pulls you through. And in that first season, the first season was kind of a mess. It didn't follow the books perfectly, but you had the girl that got murdered, and she was like this just young, desperate, ended up doing shit she didn't really want to do. And then you had the old rich guy taking advantage of everybody because he's just a bastard. And it's all very human, but at the same time it's all very impossible.
Right.
So how do we get there?
Well, I think like for instance in my Valor series, it's there's spaceships and there's space marines and there's future technologies or whatever, but like their link is just basically a cell phone that is embedded in their hand and an implant in their ear. Even some of Peter Hamilton's stuff where the computer is basically grown in their brain from the time they're born, and they have what he calls virtue vision. That's not the right term, but it's basically a computer interface that's overlaid on their vision, and they use hand movements to navigate it and eye movements to navigate it. It's very well thought out. But I mean, it's basically using a computer, but it's you that is the computer. Right. And I don't think you need to have them have a flip phone to make it relevant, but if it's for instance his morning light mounted character, there's no way that you can connect with that character at all. It's absolutely so alien that it doesn't make any sense to us at all. And when he starts doing things to the humans, you're like, holy crap, right? But I think that's why a lot of the aliens that you see in like Star Trek or Star Wars and a lot of other books is that they are
the humanoid, the clay forehead aliens.
Yeah, like we understand what they are. They wear clothes. They're mostly two-legged. Right. Usually they have two eyes. Like they're not so far out there that you don't.
They're really not Star Wars aliens,
right? Or like Babylon 5 aliens.
Or Babylon 5. That's a better example. Yeah.
I thought the Babylon 5 aliens were cool because they're like mysterious. Right. Like the Vorlon and the
Vorlons. That's what I was trying to think of.
The shadows.
Yep. But yeah, that's one that they should try to reboot because that was really good. But anyway,
what about in like?
I think that
I know you write urban fantasy, like your Master of Hounds series, and like you said at the beginning, urban fantasy, you really don't need a lot to ground it, but with magic, you have to kind of play around with it a little bit and build that into your world in a logical way. How do you handle that in your series there?
Well, the biggest thing when I'm writing urban fantasy is there's a very fine line between an urban fantasy story and a superhero story. And a lot of that, I believe that puts it more on the urban fantasy side is the power that the characters have access to, one, should not just be snap your fingers and it happens, you
Right.
know, and there should be a price for it, because, you know, we all know that if you want to be built like Dave Bautista, you got to go bust your ass in a gym. There's a price for that kind of
Right.
power. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Everybody can kind of relate to that. That's why Arlo, the wizard in that book, I wanted to make magic hard for him, even though he's like the best in the world. It also drives him fucking crazy most of the time.
Yeah.
He has to have injections of antipsychotics and things like that just to keep himself functional. And I made it so that wizards, you know, they don't function exactly like regular humans. So the drugs he gets don't have the exact same effect they'd have on a normal person. But at the same time, there's still a very high price for all the power he can wield. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I like that because it doesn't make him easy mode, right? Like
Exactly. In a lot of superhero type stories, that to me is the biggest difference. You know, Doctor Strange can do amazing things just pretty easily from, you know, watching him. There's like and the only price is he has to live in that big ass house in wherever the hell it is. I can't.
Well, and he makes like cool little animal movements.
Right.
He can just super cool animal puppets in the
right. But then he just, you know, he goes whoo and then walks away. And
right.
No real price for it. So
you know what?
I think that's the biggest difference.
You know what bugged me about that movie was when they were like turning the city topsy-turvy and like everything was folding in on itself and the bad guys were running and falling all over each other and the good guys were falling all over each other. But what happened to everybody else? Like, why did nobody else see what they were doing?
They were in one of those little pocket dimensions. So really all of that was like perceptions for it was it was all about interdimensional shit. So all the people outside of the little pocket dimension they were in, they didn't know anything was going on.
Oh, I figured they're looking into the little bubble going, yeah, what's their problem?
Yeah, right.
Those people, they're drunk. They can't even walk.
I'll have what he's having.
Yeah. That's it. But yeah, and then, you know, and then also in that book, I had Clint, who is basically Arlo's partner. You know, in this book is when they meet and he becomes his partner. And he's just the normal guy who is suddenly exposed to all this. So, you know, I made him where he's like, okay, I'm having a hard time getting my head around, you know, all the Scully stuff, you know, we're like, no, that can't be right. That's not the way science works, yada, yada, yada. And then eventually he had to come around and be like, oh, okay, maybe I don't know everything.
That's one of the things that is always, I got really tired of. It's a big trope that nobody believes it in the beginning of a story. Like you have an alien story, nobody believes the aliens are coming. If there's magic, people don't believe the magic and things like that.
But that's very human when you think about it.
It's very human, and it's a good storytelling device in order to get the information to the reader. For example, I'm listening to, because Josh forced me to read The Blade itself and all the Joe Abercrombie books. But there's magic in there. Yeah, and you know, there's magic in there, but there's a couple of characters that are just not into it. And they're right at this point, I'm in the second book, and they're on this long journey across like this desolate wasteland, and they all kind of hate each other, which is another interesting thing we could talk about. But
those are very grim dark though, right?
Yeah, they are.
Abercrombie stuff.
Yeah. Oh, super.
But so there's been several instances he's done different things. Like one day there's one of the characters is bored because he's like, we're traveling for months, we're not talking. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, let's tell some stories. Nobody wants to tell a story. It's like, well, I know a few songs. I think I'm going to sing. And they're like, okay, don't sing. We'll go ahead and tell some stories. So he tells his apprentice to tell the history of the old empire. And so you get a bunch of information. And then another part, but, you know, of course, a couple of characters don't believe it. And they're trying to be their skeptics, and convincing the skeptic or enlightening the unenlightened is a good way is a common way to get that information to your reader. Later in the book, they come to a city where they're looking at the old paintings that are falling down on the ruins where something bad happened, and all these little things to introduce you to the unbelievable. We talked about that the other day, Josh, when there was a lot of the description of the city didn't come until halfway through the first book.
Yeah.
And it came through the eyes of a character who came to visit a city, and you've been watching one of the main characters run around the city and do all this stuff, and you kind of what it looked like. But when this barbarian outsider comes in and is like overwhelmed by all the modernness of this city, it gives you a whole nother layer of believability. So I guess it's my question is, how do we get the believability to happen? What are the best ways?
Well, before we answer that question, I want to touch on the show sponsor this week, and that is Ralph Kern and his A Reign of Fire, which is the first book in his Great War series. First of all, I want to say I'm really excited about this book because Ralph has been working on this series. What do you think, for like a year now?
Over a year.
At least. He started talking about the series and what he wanted to do with it in our collective chat, and he's been really quiet. He hasn't launched anything in probably that amount of time, and he's written 4 books. I think he's on book 5 now. And he was very systematic. He really wanted to do this 30-day launch window with all his books.
And the audio
is lined up. So the Reign of Fire, or A Reign of Fire, the ebook is out today. The audio launches looks like tomorrow. And Jeffrey Kafer did the narration. And basically what Ralph has done here is taken World War II and then done it as a military sci-fi / space opera series. And so knowing that, you can read the book and see where he's pulled inspiration from these different battles and events. But let me read the blurb. War has come to the galaxy. The dark forces of the neo-hegemony strike, sweeping across the worlds of the Arcadian sector and crushing all in their path. One system stands against the onslaught, the kingdom of New Avalon. But the men and women of their expeditionary forces are trapped behind enemy lines on a besieged planet. Losing those troops will lose the war. Their only hope? A last-ditch rescue mission led by Captain Hal Cutter and his battleship Achilles. Beset on all sides by lethal enemy warships, he must lead a ragtag fleet of naval and civilian vessels across held space to save the beleaguered kingdom soldiers. Whatever, there's some words I can't read. In the skies and orbit, Lieutenant Jason Rick Richards and the untested pilots of Viper Squadron he leads in a furious battle for supremacy against elite enemy fighters. On the ground, Private Patrick Wink Goebel and his platoon must hold the line against a ruthless commander and her overwhelming force of battle-tested mechs until salvation arrives. All will play their part in this desperate struggle for survival against all odds. The Great War of Doom has begun. Read the epic new military science fiction series by Ralph Kern, the best-selling author of the Locust series, which is also very good. So, now that I have completely merged
the hegemony of valor,
hegemony. There's the link in the live chat. Go and pick it up right now and support our friend and co-host of the show, and actually co-founder almost, Ralph Kern. He was our first guest back in 2016.
He was.
First guest ever.
He linked us up with a lot of other guests as we got rolling there too, and kind of got us going.
He was our first guest. He was also the reason we met Nathan Heisted and got into the exploration anthologies. So good job, Ralph, and good luck. I bought the book. If you buy it on Kindle, you can get the audio version for $7.50.
Which I did.
It's a awesome deal.
I love that. Sometimes at work we have a word of the day. Josh, remember we around Bruno was doing that with the word of the day. So basically in your radio traffic, like if you stop a car, if you use the word of the day, you get points. And so I'm going to make How do you say it? Hegemony? Hegemony is the word of the day. So it'd be all people stopping cars, and working that into the
working it in.
And it has to actually work in the sense. That's the challenging part.
That's That's awesome. Well, sorry, Ralph, that I completely destroyed your blurb. That's my bad. But now I forgot the question that you asked, Scott.
Yeah, I'm totally.
Well, I just
before I ruined that.
I was hoping you remembered because I got lost in
we were going into the hegemonical part of our show where we discuss ways to make the unreal believable.
Right. You were wanting to know how do we.
So, and what I get at that is because we're talking about Brandon Sanderson. So if Josh says that people have to drink, so say Brandon Sanderson.
Sanderson, sorry.
Yeah, see, now everybody drinks.
Yeah.
But in his the instructional videos he did a couple of years ago, before he did the new ones recently, there was one of the first episodes I watched is he talked about the different types of stories and how they have a steeper or shallower learning curve. And he talked about that. He talked kind of about like a version of what you're saying with the urban fantasy, where you have the known world and you step through a portal into a fantastic world.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get into the story. You can get to caring about the characters quickly because they're easy to, you can focus just on them.
Easier to relate to.
Right. You don't have to figure out what a, crab thing, but rock bud is or whatever that Sanderson has. And so, but he said that's.
I tell you, that's some of the hardest
rock bud crab thing.
It's tough. That's why it took me 3 times to start Way of Kings, and I would get through because there's legitimately 3 prologues in the book.
Yeah, I started it several times too before I actually went ahead and read to the end.
Yeah,
you guys are just making me just dying to read these now.
Oh gosh, you gotta read them, Chuck.
We're selling it
for the love. I've been talking about Sanderson for 3 years. Read his damn book.
Yeah. So, but in Sanderson's class, he talked about, so you have some where you gradually get more information and you have a really shallow, easy curve where you're gently nudged into it. And then you have some where like from the first page, like, I have no idea what the hell's happening. And it's like mental work, but people like both kinds. Some people want to it's like a riddle and they got to figure it out. And other people don't want to be bashed over the head with rock buds and storm systems and storm lights and people that are running on the ceiling and you don't know why.
Yeah, exactly.
Or because there's that whole entry with the whole assassin thing in the beginning, and then you don't hear about it for another 200 pages.
Oh, that threw me. I was legitimately, I thought that somebody had forgot that guy was part of the story. And because what's crazy is with his book, The Final Empire, the first Mistborn book, you have that Mary Sue character where she comes, you have Vin who comes in from the outside who doesn't know what she doesn't know. And Kelsier teaches all about the use of the magic system, the metals and all this. And he explains to her what metals do what and walks her through it so he can walk the reader through it. Right.
Right.
Well, in Stormlight, he doesn't do that at all. As a matter of fact, he goes from something that happened 5,000 years ago to something that happened 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And the terms that he uses in the assassin chapter, he doesn't explain. He doesn't say anything about it. He just says he uses the terms because the character that he's writing knows what the terms mean. But you don't ever get those terms until book 2. You don't ever figure out what those terms mean until you get to book 2.
Which is
it's nuts.
It's interesting to how do they get the reader to invest that much time and effort?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how many people make it to book 2?
Apparently a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Is that lack of, here's the thing, having not read them, it's hard for me to relate, but I'm just you're telling me all this, but is there a character in there in that explanation, seeing all of this where the reader can kind of look through their eyes and latch on to that character to get through all the stuff that needs explaining?
So first I'll answer, James and Nathan point out, she's not really Mary Sue. You're right. And James is right. She's actually a rookie. And it's true. because they don't use her as a Mary Sue, but they do teach her. He does teach her about the metals so she can understand it more, and that way we can understand it more as a reader. So you're right, not really a Mary Sue. Moving on, the Stormlight books, no, there is never a point where he tells you what's going on in the story. There's never a point where he explains why things happen the way they do. There's a lot of things that happen in the book that's still on book 3. You have no idea why they happen. They just happen. And
some of it is, and I think some readers of the genre, they want to be intrigued.
Well, now,
and,
are you talking,
you know,
about magic?
You're roboting.
Happen that you don't, they happen. Talk about as part of the magic scene?
No, well, everything, the whole world.
So for example, I was reading one of those chapters, and they're like, I think the slaves are going to do the bridge thing.
Yeah.
And they're going across the landscape, and you realize there's like no grass or trees. And I'm like, and it's rock, but like when there's these storms, something comes out of the rocks. I guess it's like plants or something, or some sort of vegetation, then it retreats back in. But you really don't know. I'm like, it's literally so alien. I don't even know what the ground looks like because there's no grass or dirt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going, and so, I mean, everything is completely original, which is kind of cool in a way, but it's also, it makes you work.
Yeah.
But for some reason I wanted to know, and I kept going. I did like some of the characters. It's a shifting point of view. So there's multiple points of view. And I had 1 or 2 characters I really liked reading about, and 1 or 2 that I was just worked to get through because I didn't like the character or how that was told.
I mean, we write big epic stuff. So
one of the things that I would say to bring this kind of full circle is that there is a lot of trust that Sanderson has built with his readers. And so when you get into a Sanderson book, you trust that he knows what he's doing. And so you forgive a lot of this other stuff. But if you don't have the reader trust, then I would highly discourage you from doing the throwing it all at you and not giving any lead in.
Maybe don't do that in your first book or 10.
Yeah. Because I mean, this is
I mean, there's
go ahead.
I was going to say, we could really do a whole episode on, the writer's reputation, relationship with his audience and all stuff, and how that impacts the kind of stories you can tell.
Yeah.
Don't have any experience with that, but we could talk about it.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned was characters, how the characters can pull you along in the fantastical setting. And I think that's one of the things that he does really well is you follow the characters and you like the characters. I think like talking about fantasy, since we're talking about that genre right now, you can look at A Song of Ice and Fire, and you mentioned setting and characters specifically before we started, that help ground and pull through. I think that George Martin does that extremely well with his characters and his setting, because, well, first, it's low magic, so you really don't have to jump that hurdle. But even on the stuff like with Melisandre and the dragons, I mean, everything else is so grounded and real that you're like, of course there's dragons.
It just kind of kind of folds in naturally, like chocolate and peanut butter.
He does other things too that I didn't get because I listened to the audiobook first, and then I started reading it as I was listening to it. But like a lot of the things that are familiar are actually different if you read it, because like there's like what's the guy, Sir Raymond Royce or whatever.
Yeah, Sir Raymar.
So Sir Raymar. So, but it's not Sir Raymar like in a knight. It's Ser, S-E-R. So there's little things, little details that I think made it pleasing and a little bit fresher. But it's just a little bit of a twist on some of the familiar terms.
Yeah,
something unexpected in the small things.
Yeah.
Well, but I think you could, like, a lot of the stuff that he does in that book. Like, we don't have horse lords here, but we know what Genghis Khan and those guys, like the Mongols, we know about them. We know it was a fact in history that they existed. So going from that to the Dothraki is very easy. Like, we don't have to imagine that or build up from that. And so I don't know. When you talk about, I'm trying to think right now about the stuff that I've read that I found it hard to get into. You know what?
Dan Simmons book, the Hyperion.
Hyperion
Yeah,
was super
Hyperion.
hard.
Yeah.
Hyperion was tough.
Yeah.
Hyperion was tough.
Hyperion was tough because the first ship that they were on, it was a tree in space. Right? Like it was a big tree in space with a whole bunch of branches.
It's funny because you talked about this last time you talked about Hyperion, and I read it, but I can't hardly remember anything about it. None of it stuck.
I think that, it's basically the Canterbury Tales, a science fiction version of the Canterbury Tales. You got all these people telling different stories in this one setting kind of thing.
Yeah.
But after I read it years and years and years ago, but I just remember thinking it's almost like he was trying so hard to make it a science fiction version of that classic that some of the structure was just a little, I don't really know how to describe it, but it made it hard to get through.
It was hard. Yeah, it was not structured like a lot of sci-fi at the time.
Yeah.
And they really pushed it as a literary science fiction.
Right.
They were trying to be literary. And that's why I picked it up, because I looked at the board, I was like, oh yeah, this has got all these literary criticism, and I was having some of that sci-fi readers, now it's not so much, but even back then is like, you're like, well, I need to read some highbrow stuff.
Really, the only thing that got me through that book was the one character with the daughter who was aging backwards.
Yeah.
And that was the one story I gave a shit about in that whole book.
Bard of Today says Hyperion of Valor.
Yeah. Well, what was tough for me about Hyperion, and then the fall of Hyperion, to a point, is that I liked the characters telling their own stories. I did like some of the stories more than others.
Right.
The thing that threw me is you never knew when in time those stories were happening relative to the other stories.
Right. Yeah.
And so like it was just a huge jumble of timeline trying to figure out in my head. I know somehow these stories connect with the other stories, but how and where and when. That was super hard for me to do.
Yeah. No, it was a tough book for sure.
I need to finish it because everybody that has finished all 4 books said it's really, really good.
I finished the first one. I don't think I went past that.
I read the second one, but honestly, it's been so long that I don't remember what the second one was.
Yeah, I was in high school when I read that, I think.
I'm trying to think of another book that Ringworld I didn't like at all, and maybe people will yell at me for that, but I didn't like Ringworld. I didn't feel it at all. Like it just felt too.
Yeah. I could see that.
Like, so we've talked about the Dark Tower. So I'm looking at my bookshelf to figure out what we're talking about. But he does that where he has some stuff that's new, but he cheats because when he wants some familiarity, he just goes back into the contemporary world.
Yeah.
And then jumps. That's technically portal fiction, which is a little bit different than urban fantasy, which I didn't know until recently.
Well, the Dark Tower though.
Most of it is in our world.
Most of it, yeah.
There's a lot of, but this magical realm is just almost where you could touch it, and it's intriguing.
Yeah, but you could see the correlation in Midworld to our world was super close. They weren't that far off. Because you still had humans and everything else. Like Narnia. Narnia was very like fantastical in a way, where the Dark Tower wasn't really fantastical. The only difference between Midworld and our world was Midworld was destroyed by something.
Yeah, it was post-apocalyptic basically.
They had like kind of vampires and not vampires. What are the guys in the hats with the wolf eyes and the animal thing.
Yeah, I forgot about those guys.
And you had, so, but it's just a little bit different.
Well, I think even with that, he started out small, and I think that's the key. Is if you start out small and then build out, you could
Yeah,
pretty much
absolutely.
do whatever you want, and go anywhere as long as you're not throwing it all. It's kind of like when you don't want to throw a whole bunch of exposition in the front of your book and drown people in the world, because you get overwhelmed. If you start really small and then grow out, I don't think it really matters what you do. I think you could do anything.
Yeah.
There's a really good example of that pops to mind, and I can't think of the title, but it's one of oh my God, my brain is not working tonight. Neil Gaiman. It's one of his books. I think it's called Neverwhere, something like that. But it's about this guy in London who discovers that there's this whole underground like existence of all these magical beings who look just like you and me, only they might be dressed weird or something, but they exist in kind of the slum underground of London. But it starts out very small with him meeting like this one weird character, and then it's like down the rabbit hole, and the more fantastical elements get doled out slowly over the course of the story.
I need to read some Gaiman. I don't know. I've never read any Gaiman.
He's so good that it's I mean, he can probably get away with a lot too. I mean, he just really sucks you in. I listen to
he's one of those that people trust.
What's the one? It might have been I can't remember if it was a Graveyard Book, but it was one recently I listened to the audiobook, and I got to the end and realized it was read by the author.
Oh yeah, he does a good job.
And I was like amazed. It was like he's a legit book narrator. It was pretty impressive.
He wrote this thing as a couple of years ago, I think. It was called Click Clack Rattle Bag, and it was just like a short story, not quite a novella, just a long short story. And he narrated that on I think it was for Audible. But he can really perform his work. I mean, it's really, really cool to listen to.
That's some good stuff.
I'll have to put him on my reading list. It's so long now that
another one that's kind of in that, it's not Neil Gaiman. It's called The Night Circus. Is a really interesting book. That's kind of it's not really urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it's urban fantasy or portal fantasy, but very excellent. I actually listened to the audiobook twice back to back. Like I listened to it and then I just listened to it again.
What you should listen
never
to?
done that.
You know what you should start with, Josh, is I would point you towards American Gods and A Nancy Boys.
I still haven't read
those. I
haven't read those.
I never saw the show, but I read both of those books. Loved them tremendously.
Isn't American Gods a TV show now? I think
it is.
Yeah.
On FX or something. I don't even know. HBO maybe.
Guy pointed out, I was trying to think of. Night Circus is more like magical realism, which is a magical realism. Like the first time I heard that term was there was a movie a long time ago called Like Water for Chocolate, which is magical realism. And I've always struggled with why magical realism isn't urban fantasy. But it's kind of like if magic was real, but everybody accepted, and you didn't have to explain anything, it just kind of was there. And there's no.
I think that's it's a different flavor, but it's still Kool-Aid.
I think it's like the science fiction authors that say they're not science fiction authors; they're just writers. I can't remember the name of the two authors that are coming to mind, but they've distinctly said I am not a sci-fi author, but they obviously write sci-fi. So I think people say it's magical realism because it's like a highbrow urban fantasy.
And a lot of them, but a lot of them are kind of folksy too. And I can't, I have to do some research on that. I'll come back and be more informed on that.
Ero Ochoa asked about 20 books tickets. I think they're sold out, actually.
I think they're already sold out. Yeah, they went on sale yesterday or day before, and they probably sold out in about 6 hours.
As far as I know, they sold out in like 17 hours. Like they sold, I think he made a post the other day, said they sold 500 tickets in the first minute, and then they sold like 1,000 more tickets over the next like hour or something like that. Like it's ridiculously crazy how fast it sold out. The interesting thing about going to Vegas is you don't really need to buy a ticket to go hang out with everybody at Sam's. You could just go and hang out with authors at Sam's, and it's That's where the cool thing is.
Did you guys get tickets?
Yeah, we got tickets. We're doing a panel.
Yeah.
With the
We're doing a panel on podcasting.
we were
and
invited to do a panel on podcasting. We're gonna have.
Can we talk about who's on it? I
Let
mean,
me see.
might as well.
Where's Lauren's message?
Is it the Selmore Book Show?
Brian Cohen?
No, it's not Brian. It's
he offered.
He was interested. Maybe Lauren can type.
Yeah,
we've got Lindsay Baroker. It's Scott, me, Lindsay. I'm trying to find. Okay, there we go. Now she said James Blatch, Hank Gardner, Lindsay Baroker, and me and Scott. And I'm not sure when the panel is going to go, but we will be doing a panel. Thanks, Lauren, on podcasting for authors that are interested in podcasting, for storytellers that are wanting to podcast, and I think we can even roll it into being a good guest on podcast.
But for getting on interviews and getting on podcasts, if you're not wanting to have your own,
I think that podcasting is really it's a medium that a lot of people want to get into, but a lot of people don't really understand. And I mean, 45 minutes isn't a long time, and whatever we don't cover in the panel, we can cover on the show definitely. But I think it's going to be a good time.
It's going to be awesome. We also should talk about the KSM meetup.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, we had a meetup on the balcony of the atrium, and I'm going to try to hook that up again this year. Either that, or there may be an offsite location that we're talking about maybe going to. It just depends on how many people are interested. So I'm going to put up a poll tonight, a yes or no poll. If you're going to Vegas and you want to have a hangout, I'll put that up in the group tonight, and we'll see how many people are interested. That'll kind of dictate where we go from there. I think it'll be fun. It's been fun the last couple of years. We did it last year. We did it at this kind of a sports bar, and there's pool tables and really good food actually. But it was kind of a long walk. So we'll see.
It was getting in there was an adventure. I thought it was a character study. Some of the
yeah, you had to watch where you're walking. There was some interesting things that were going on, but if you are coming, definitely come to our panel, and there shall be no shenanigans in the panel audience.
There's gonna be shenanigans.
Lauren is going to be the, what do they call it? The moderator. So if you want to get questions asked, then contact.
If you want to learn about our hegemonical rise to the top of podcasting.
That's really good, Scott. I like that.
I have no idea if that even works.
You get points for working it in for word of the day.
That's right. That's right.
See, taking an early lead in the word of the day contest.
Let's see, what do we got going on this week?
When you go argue with your family and stuff, be like, don't interfere with my hegemony.
That's right.
I rule this house. Or whatever, working in.
I think next this coming Thursday on the Writer's Journey, Lauren and Kayleen are talking to some authors about behind the scenes conference stuff, writer conference stuff. That should be interesting on Thursday. I am joining Walt tomorrow morning early for Coffee and Concepts at 6:30 my time, 7:30 Eastern.
That's why you have coffee. That's why it's a coffee.
That's why there'll be
coffee.
I actually got some new coffee that I'm going to try tomorrow morning from Black Rifle Coffee. Coffee or Die.
Do one late at night. It could be like a melatonin show. Where we call it the NyQuil Express show.
Let's say it's the evening haze, and the whole time we're like drifting off on the melatonin,
sleeping on the mic.
That's right.
Oh.
So if you're up early,
normally get up.
Me?
Yeah.
When the kids wake up. That's actually this morning I got up at 5:30. I got up and did some writing this morning at 5:30.
Well, then you're on schedule, man. Just go to bed as soon as we're done. You'll be fine.
I'll be up for that. So if you're up early, check us out.
I'm going to get up early and heckle you.
That's right. We can always use More
You'd be like
heckles.
half asleep, not able to defend yourself because you're still waking up, and it'll be like slam, slam, slam.
Let's see. Joshua Gayu also posted another story time or storytelling, excuse me, to our YouTube channel. I'm not sure when it's going to go up on the podcast. It's probably going to be a couple days, but if you are enjoying his storytelling episodes, he has a show today. Was it today? Today? Lynn Kaczynski? Lynn Kaczynski?
It's like hegemony.
Yeah.
Hegemony.
Really good conversation with I think he's a movie maker, filmmaker. A really good conversation between them. It's really good.
Excellent.
Show.
Good stuff.
What is this nonsense? After the divorce, I have to pay lots of
That's a good one. You got to go. That's a good one.
Can I use it in a sentence, please?
Yeah.
Nice.
If you could work hegemony and Brandon Sanderson into the same thing.
G money. Yes. The fishy update. Actually, this is crazy. The fish is still alive. I have to change the water tomorrow, but the fish is still alive. And I'm
Did you cut his power off? What happened?
No, I just forgot to turn the light on.
Didn't pay the bill.
He's in timeout. He's been a bad fish.
Nighttime for the fish. Go to sleep. Go to sleep, fishy. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. As always, it's been a blast, and so were you guys. If this was your first time watching the show, make sure you
Scott doesn't always mess up the beginnings of the shows,
but when I do, I make sure it's kind of retarded.
One of these days, hold on, I got to find this comment so I can click it off. There we go. One of these days, we're going to get through the intro and the outro without having to restart 18 times.
No, we're not.
No, we're not. No, we're not. It's part of the goodness of this
That's
show.
our charm.
A good, wholesome richness.
Also, self-promotion. If you haven't nominated Edge of Valor for the Military Sci-Fi Dragon Award this year, please go and do it right now. There's a big push. And I see a lot of other authors pushing, so I am pushing. If you have an email address, you too can nominate. You too can be nomination. I don't even know what person, Dragon Award nominee. And Kayleen just posted, "Give me your titles," but it definitely didn't look like that.
It didn't look like titles.
You didn't read that right.
No.
Oh, woo! Nice work, Kayleen.
We must be tired.
Everybody in live chat, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Make sure you come back on Thursday to hang out with Lauren, Kayleen. Come hang out with me and Walt tomorrow on Coffee with Concepts. And we have a full week of content coming to you from Keystroke Medium in season 5. Crazy. Yeah, I don't know. This was a great show. Thank you guys for making it even greater. Come back next time. We're going to talk about reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.
Peace. Where the hegemony continues.
Later, guys.
Hegemony.